crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I am here with a video for Create a Smile stamps. Now, Create a Smile stamps is actually on vacation right now. This is being published in April of 2017, and they'll be back in May of 2017. But there are some other places online where you can find their products. So I'm going to be working with Distress Oxide Inks, you may have seen there, with this Create a Smile sentiment stamp set that is new to me. I love the big, bold sentiments with that scripty font. And then 2 different Create a Smile stencils. I adore Create a Smile stencils because they're such versatile patterns that you can use over and over again and not too specific. So I'm going to be using the big polka heart stencil, which I've used quite a few times on my channel and in my card making in general. But I also will use the sort of newer to me nautical stars that's been out for a while though, but just one I recently picked up. So I am working, like I said, with the Distress Oxide Inks, and I have never played with these before. I just got 2 colors. I have the Cracked Pistachio and Wilted Violet. I wanted to sort of play with them first before I bought the whole collection. See, do I really need them? But you kind of know me, I'm probably going to need them. I do have like the full collection of Distress inks and use them quite a bit and enjoy fun techniques with them. So I think the Distress Oxides are going to be pretty tempting. So I'm going to make 3 cards with Distress Oxides today and share a couple of different things that you can do with them, but there's a lot of other great tutorials out there too. I just thought that it would be fun to kind of have a play and share with you what I did while I was playing. So this first thing that I'm doing, I actually don't really wind up, I use it, but I don't use the background that I'm creating. So I'm trying to create a background that I think is going to be pretty, and then I don't like it at all. But I still wanted to show you because this is a cool technique to do with Distress inks, but then didn't work as well with Distress Oxides in my personal opinion. So I laid the stencil down and spritzed through the stencil because Distress Oxide inks are reactive with water. And I thought, oh, well, I'll pull up the ink in the stencil and then it will leave the areas not sprayed darker. And it kind of works, as you see. However, it's really sort of muddy, and some of them look like hearts and some of them look like a mess. So I wasn't really loving the way that turned out, and didn't really think it was a special enough background for my card, so I kind of just put that off to the side. And I thought maybe I just sprayed too much water, and I tried it with less water, and it just, I don't know, I didn't like it as much. I think that technique is really fun with Distress inks, but it just wasn't quite the same with the oxides, not really sure why, so I said, I'm going to try something else. Distress Oxides are dye and pigment ink, so I want to take advantage of that fact that basically you can layer them in a totally different way than you can the regular Distress inks. So if I cover my whole card base here with the Distress Oxide Cracked Pistachio and dry it, I will be able to put the Wilted Violet over it, but it will still be purple. It won't like mix green and purple, and that's very different. You can't do that with the regular Distress inks because they're dye inks and they sink into the paper and they will look kind of like muddy, and green and purple will basically make brown. So as you can see here, I'm working on my grid surface as usual, but I'm putting a piece of like plastic divider on top of it so that I can clean it off pretty well, but obviously a Ranger craft mat would be great. It's just that the white color looks a little better on video, makes everything easier for you to see. So when you cover the background in the Distress Oxide inks, dry it before you add more, because otherwise you will get more of a blending, which is awesome when you want blending. You can blend the Distress Oxides together and get some colors in between. However, that's not what I'm looking to do because these colors are opposite on the color wheel and won't blend so nicely. So I want to completely dry my green or pistachio layer here and then come in with my purple. And as you can see, because it's a pigment ink, it goes on really thick and heavy and completely covers up that green, and I am like in love, like so happy, because I love that like really thick bold color of pigment inks, but then they like never dry. Like I have had pigment ink stamped for months and it's still not dry, and I tried the heat gun and all that, but Distress Oxide inks dry and they look like pigment and they're amazing. So I took my Distress Ink blender tool there, and I just sort of pushed the ink through the stencil. I didn't do a full blending motion. It was more of a push and twist just to get a nice thick coverage. And then I misted it ever so gently to get those Distress Oxides sort of reacting, because it kind of gives different like interesting layers. It gives it a little bit more of a chalky finish. It actually makes the colors kind of seem a little bit more saturated even. And this time I forgot to put down the plastic thing, so now my work surface is dirty, and that might be kind of distracting, but it's fine. So there's this background, and I'm finally happy with the background, and I am ready to go ahead and add a sentiment. And so here I'm using that sort of stenciled heart background that didn't really work out to create the purple part of the frame. And then I'm using a bit more of the cracked pistachio piece to put the sentiment on. And I use the magical frame die, which cuts both that sort of stamp-like border and this inside square, which actually has a little bit of stitching detail. It's a little hard to see in the video, but it is there. There's a stitching detail around the edge. And now I'm ready to stamp my sentiment. A fair amount of the sentiments from this Decorated Wishes stamp set do fit inside this frame, which is also from Create a Smile. The die, the stencils, the stamps, all from Create a Smile. And I am stamping it with VersaFine Onyx Black Pigment ink, so that it's like a really crisp, bold sentiment. And so I'll put that on the cracked pistachio, surround it with the Wilted Violet, which again was that original piece that I made by spritzing the heart stencil, and I didn't like it, but I didn't want to just toss it. And since it was mostly purple, I thought, well, you know, if I just cut a little strip of it, it'll just look like interesting purple paper and not like a mess that I made at the beginning of the video. So I'm going to put my background on some black, and the reason I wanted to put it on black is because I think that it will make the really bright Distress Ink colors pop, but also to tie in that bold black sentiment and kind of give it a little bit more weight there. And the first time I did this, I used multimedia matte to stick down my frame, but I realized later that I could have just used my adhesive, and I'll show you that when I assemble one of the other cards. Because once I got going and one of my backgrounds didn't turn out to be a complete mess, I wanted to keep playing with my Distress Oxide inks. And one thing that I knew about oxide inks, and I felt like was definitely going to work because I saw how nice the pigment part was, is that you can put Distress Oxide inks on dark colored paper, which is so awesome because I used to, like, you'd only be able to do that with pigment inks, and then they would never dry, and they would smear everywhere, or then you'd have to try to emboss them, and I still smeared them everywhere, and that's probably user error a little bit. But I don't know, I just was never successful with pigment inks, so Distress Oxide inks are like rocking my world because they give me all the cool stuff of pigment inks without them making a mess, which is my tendency. Now, it's a little bit less vibrant. The color is different. Wilted Violet on white looks different than on black, than probably does on craft as well, so just kind of keep that in mind. Once I had all that ink on the stencil, I said, let's not waste it like I did last time, and I put a cardstock piece right on top of that wet stencil, and I took a brayer and just sort of rubbed that paper onto the wet stencil because I spritzed it once, and it allowed me to create another interesting background without using more Distress Oxide ink there. So now I have two heart backgrounds, one, the black one here, which you can see is already pretty much dry, which is so cool. And I'm not smearing it everywhere, as is my tendency. So this time, though, I wanted to create a border accent color with the cracked pistachio. So I'm taking a piece of cardstock and I'm covering just the edges with the cracked pistachio Distress Oxide ink. And one thing that I want to mention about Distress Oxide inks versus the traditional Distress inks is they cover paper a lot faster. So if you've ever felt a little bit frustrated blending with the traditional Distress inks, you may want to consider the oxides. They do blend a lot faster. And so I'm going to put that black panel on some cracked pistachio background paper, and I'm going to put that purple reverse stencil background also on some cracked pistachio paper, and then add a similar frame and stamp. So like just like I did it before, where I had the frame is green and the inside, or the frame is purple and the inside is green, I just kind of did the opposite for these ones because the colors worked a little bit better, but it's the same exact stamping, same exact die. This time though, I just used some tape to basically adhere them together and then onto the card all at once. And so I have 3 cards made with the Distress Oxide inks. They're all pretty similar, but again, this was me just sort of like having a play the very first time without trying to necessarily go for an exact technique or copy something I saw. I just like, let me just pull out some stuff and think about what I know, and you know, see what I can create with these Distress Oxide inks. And I certainly look forward to playing with them a bit more, but I love the way that the stencils and die cuts and stamps all from Create a Smile Stamp worked out really well to create these 3 fun, simple cards experimenting with those oxide inks. So that is it for my video today. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I will leave links to the products that I can find in the video description below, and also to all of my social media so you can check me out all over the web. Thanks so much for watching. Have an awesome day. Bye.